And we're now live. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all our wonderful participants, Earth Action Hub, that now are almost 2,200. And we're very proud. It's been a very busy 3 days with a lot of incredible talk, conversation, and speakers. And now we have Isabel Losada, who is a very special advocate about the environment and our planet, but also she has an incredible writer. I've been writing some really, really good books, very inspiring, with positive solution about what we're going through. But I now give the floor to Isabel because she has a lot to share with us, and we are so much looking forward to her talk. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. How lovely. So I've written a book called The Joyful Environmentalist, and it focuses purely on solutions. I don't look at environmental problems at all because I think you're all already well versed in how bad the situation is. So I'm looking exclusively at solutions, and I've got 25 minutes to talk to you. So I'm just going to run through every single solution because I know a lot of you listening, you're already environmentalists, and some of the information that I give you, you will already know, I'm sure. You'll already be implementing some of those changes in your life. But my hope is that during this time, there'll be one or two things that you might not have already done that you'll be wanting to do. And in The Joyful Environmentalist, I tell stories and I explore all the solutions with the idea that life is short. So as well as being environmentalists, we want to find solutions that enrich our lives to the full. And of course, a lot of the environmental solutions not only help the planet, but also help us. So I hope you've got a pen and paper. So the number one solution that I've got here is, if you haven't already done so, change your bank account. Because if you're with a high street bank, the chances are that they are either lending or investing your money in perhaps the arms industry, perhaps a local vivisection center, perhaps you might be deeply committed to public education, but they're spending money on a private school. And most of all, of course, they're likely to be investing in the petrol, in the, all the fossil fuel industries. So what I did in Britain is I did a search for the local ethical banks, and we have in the UK, we have a magazine called The Ethical Consumer that lists all the most ethical banks. And I went to the top one. The bank that I was formerly with was at the bottom of the ethical list, famous for investing in fossil fuels. The one at the top of the goodies list was a bank called Triodos Bank. And they, unlike my high street bank, they have a list of all the people that they lend money to and all the people that they invest in. So I simply made a swap. And so now I have a bank that I can be proud of because I know what my money is doing. And when I was discussing this on a radio show, someone said, well, it doesn't sound very joyful changing your bank account. But actually, for the first time in my life, I have a bank that I'm proud of. And as they say at that particular bank, put your money where your values are. So that is a really good tip, especially as most people, when they sign up for a bank, they tend to stay with the same bank 20, 30 years, and they never consider swapping. And they believe as if the bank cares that we're with this high street bank, but of course they don't care. So just with a high street bank, leave them, find an ethical bank that supports your values and supports the planet. So that's the number one tip, I'd say. Then secondly, another thing is that change your energy supplier. So either if you the energy to your property and look at whether your energy supply is genuinely sustainable and genuinely ethical. So what I did, I was already with an ethical supplier, a sustainable company in Britain called Good Energy. And what I do in the book is I go and interview her and I ask her all the questions that I hope you would want to ask if you're speaking to your energy provider. I didn't really understand, I have a certain amount of gas in the house and a certain amount of electricity. And I know the electricity comes from 100% renewable sources. But then on the other hand, obviously we're all using the same electricity. It comes from the grid. But by being with a genuinely sustainable energy provider, I know that the money I'm paying them is going to supply only renewable energy. So I'm still using the same. So I had all kinds of questions about this. And then I had some people come and did an environmental test on the energy in my house. And they wanted me to keep my old gas boiler, which I was very confused about, because I said, well, surely if we're going to be environmental, we need to be moving away from gas. So I had a lot of questions to ask my energy provider. And that's important because, of course, now all the energy companies, they're all claiming to be ethical and they're all claiming to be sustainable. So it's quite difficult to work out who's greenwashing and who is not greenwashing. But it's well worth doing a real overhaul on your gas, your electricity, your suppliers, and making sure that your energy supplier is the most ethical and the most sustainable that you can do. In the UK, I found Good Energy to be a good one, but there are obviously different energy providers all over the world, and it's really good to check the genuine credibility of your energy provider and try and support the companies that are giving renewable energy. The third thing is to make a game of removing all the plastic from your life and your home. So it's difficult at first, of course. So we start with a single-use plastic. We try and avoid that, and I'm sure you're already doing that. But then as you go through your entire house, it becomes a game. So, for example, my favorite example is that our parents and grandparents had a beautiful fountain pen. They had one beautiful fountain pen. So this is my pen. It's all metal. And it's metal inside, and it fills up from an old-fashioned inkwell. And to buy one gorgeous fountain pen like your parents and grandparents have, that's an example of what I was saying about doing things that also enrich our lives, because somehow we've all developed homes that have 32 plastic biros in it. If you go to almost anybody's house, they've all got loads and loads of plastic biros lying around. Like, no more plastic biros, no more anything in plastic, but make it enjoyable, make it a game to find the alternatives. Another of my favorites in the house is I had an old plastic laundry basket, which was really quite ugly. And one day I was passing a shop and there was one beautiful wicker basket, all engraved with, woven with red and orange wicker. And I thought how beautiful it was. I think it came from somewhere in Ghana. So I brought that, and then I thought, right, but what do I do with the plastic one? Because I don't want to put it in the bin. And I thought, I know, I'll give it to my local laundrette. My local laundrette, their plastic laundry basket is always being broken. So they were very happy to have it. So that's another example of and things that are not plastic, things that are made by real people. Obviously, you're supporting artisan, real products. They just feel different in your home. They feel much more enriching than all this mass-produced plastic. So make a game of that. Where are we? 12:09. Okay. Embrace radical simplicity. The simpler your life is, the less inclined to shop. And we need to think very carefully before we buy every single purchase. We need to think about the supply chains of the objects that we buy. So an obvious example is clothes. When we buy clothes, we need to preferably don't buy clothes. It sounds crazy, but we all have enough clothes. How do we know? Where do we see people walking naked in the street? Clothes, there are lots and lots of clothes around. And they say that in our wardrobe, we usually tend to wear 80% of our clothes 20% of the time. No, 20% of our clothes. That's right. We wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. So if you've got a wardrobe, you're only usually wearing the same ones all the time. So look carefully before you buy clothes. Preferably buy clothes from charity shops. And if you are going to buy something new for a special occasion, make sure that you know the supply chain of that. So and buy organic cotton, because if you're not buying organic cotton, then obviously you're supporting the farmers that are putting chemicals on the land. So we need to be thinking very carefully before we purchase anything at all. Just think and live more simply. So live with less objects all the time. And that enables us to be more conscious of the impact we're having on the planet. And it also makes our life just easier if it's simpler. Simplicity and ease and less stuff. That's all part of looking after the planet and looking after ourselves. There's an interesting phrase that a climate scientist used with me, which is be a little bit activist. Now, I know that all of you on here, you're activist already, and the thing is to watch your activism, to make sure that you choose activism that is really supporting the planet and also supporting you. Because if you're doing something that you feel really uncomfortable with, then the result will be burnout. So in your activism, attempt to make your activism both joyful and persistent. Because if you've got something that you love to do, then you'll want to continue doing it, and you'll be more persistent in your actions. Obviously, this is a wide subject, how to be activist. But my 2 tips here are: be activist, be a little bit activist all the time, and do it joyfully and persistently. Cars. If you own a car, just have a think about how your life would feel and what it would be like if you didn't own a car. And this is very challenging for some people. But when I look at it in the book, I realize that owning cars is one of the things that has really divided us and divided our communities. Because often people will say to me, well, if I didn't have a car, I'd need to move close to my grandchildren, or I'd need to move to my grandfather because he's on his own and I'd want to be close to him. And I realized that cars, not only are they destroying the planet, but they also divide us a lot as people. And someone will say, well, I couldn't live without my car. And then I say, well, let's imagine that the international economic downturn is even worse than we perhaps think it might be, and you were unable to live without a car. Then what would you do then? And how would you make that work? How would you make that joyful? What are the other alternatives in terms of transport? So that's a challenging one, but it's just interesting. Think of what you would have to do if you chose not to have a car. And I'm just looking, that's a challenging one, but it's interesting. I don't have a car, and I haven't had a car for 25 years, but I live in a city, so it's easy. And I realize it's harder if you live in the countryside, but what would you do then? That's a question to consider. Okay, obviously, plan holidays that don't involve flying. I know flying is a big topic and everybody has different feelings about this. My own feeling, that is not as radical as Greta's, but my own feeling is I won't take any national flights. So within Great Britain, I will only take the train. And I don't want to give up traveling forever, because I believe that travel broadens the mind and is important. But my own particular decision on this is I will only allow myself to fly once every other year. So that's my own particular decision. So you can reach your own decisions on that one. But yes, I'm not prepared to say I'm never going to fly, but that's my own decision. But it's an interesting one to discuss, isn't it? Environmental, I'm looking at the time here, environmental volunteering that you love. I did a wonderful thing in the book. The forest, they're replanting the original native rainforest in Scotland, and I spent a really wonderful 10 days with a charity called Trees for Life UK, and there were about 10 of us, and we planted trees up in the Highlands for about a week, and it was just wonderful. And as I said to them, in cities, we feel very proud if we planted one tree. It's, I planted a tree, I've made a difference. So it's really lovely if you're thinking of going on holiday with a loved one, look at the environmental volunteering opportunities, because for me, it was just so wonderful to spend a week planting trees all day, every day. It was genuinely, profoundly, I think, fulfilling. And so, yes, environmental volunteering. Look into that. if you're not well versed in rewilding and how that works, where people are restoring the land to nature, it's a really good thing to learn about. Again, there's my book, The Joyful Environmentalist. There's also a lovely book called Rewilding by Isabel Losada, where she tells the story of a farm that she and her husband had, and they were farming and they weren't managing to make it financially successful. And so they decided to rewild the land and to give the land back to nature, and gradually reintroduce the animals. And so now they're farming again, but in a completely different way. And it's just a fascinating book, the story of two farmers that changed the whole way they farm, from a way that is exploiting the land to a way that is respecting the land and letting the land lead. So rewilding projects are cropping up all over the world. So if you don't know a local rewilding project, then find one and go and visit it and learn about their work, because it's just the most beautiful thing. And in the environmental movement, it's just the most positive and lovely changes that are happening, both to biodiversity and the ways of thinking. So yes, find your local rewilding project and go and visit it. Yes, slightly this on a similar theme to the one I mentioned earlier on, but yes, don't buy new clothes. Instead, have way more fun with your old clothes. In the 60s, people really celebrated the clothes they wear. They were bright, they were an expression of personality, everybody was individual. And now, not only do we buy these clothes that are exploiting the planet, but they're also very boring. You know, we all look the same. We all wear jeans, we all wear black t-shirts. And it's so at the same time as not buying new clothes, I encourage you to enjoy your clothes more. Be more creative with your clothes. Buy secondhand clothes, but stitch them together in wonderful ways, and just be more individual whilst not buying new clothes. That's a challenge. Okay. A simple one, but if you want to help the planet, we do need to be radical. I do recommend not eating meat or fish or seafood or birds or anything that's been alive. And I'm sure some of you are already vegetarian or vegan, in fact, or are exploring that. Now, people often say, but I couldn't do that in my country, or my family would get rid of me, or my husband would hate me. And they ask, how do you persuade people that still want to eat meat if you yourself are not a meat eater? And I say, the joyful environmentalist method is always leading through pleasure. So learn wonderful vegan and vegetarian cookery and seduce them through the palate. Cook food that is so tasty that they don't care anymore about the fact that there's no meat on the plate, because what you're giving them is so delicious that they go, wow, what is this? Obviously, in Indian food, there's a wonderful range of curries and beautiful things that you can eat. And so if you are a meat eater, I recommend, first of all, there's a thing called No Meat Mondays. So just explore not eating meat on one day, and then gradually build up your range of vegetarian and vegan recipes that are wonderful. So take steps towards that. And I think you'll find that the vegetarian vegan food, as well as supporting your health, you'll feel better. And you'll know that animals are not suffering because of your food choices. In all these things I'm suggesting, obviously you'll adapt them for wherever you live, but explore buying beautiful and exploring, learning your friends' favorite vegetarian and vegan recipes. Ask grandmother, ask your auntie, ask people you know for their favorite dishes, and explore in that direction. Okay. Where are we? 20 past. I've got another 5 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna speed up. Moving, because we don't know what's happening with the waste in the world and with recycling. Again, a bit like I said, make a game of becoming plastic free, make a game of becoming waste free. Just explore how you can cut down the waste that's coming out of your house completely. Just only having things that come into your house that don't have packaging, and so you become waste free. Learn about the earth, learn about earth itself, and compost your food. Very important. I'm imagining that you're eating organic fruit and vegetables. Don't put your food waste in the bin. It's very important that your beautiful potato peelings go back to the earth. So whatever you do, compost your food. If you don't have a garden yourself, find an old person living locally that has a garden and ask if she'd like your compost. Go and say hello, and find somewhere that you can compost your food. Oh, I've got 4 minutes left. Learn things that enrich your life that don't cost money. So become experts in cooking and music and sexuality, even things that are enriching but not expensive. Find a garden, yours or someone else's, and plant the plants. As there's a man in America who says, growing your own food is like printing your own money. So if you have financial problems, learn to grow your own food, because it helps. Also, wine, food and wine. Try and buy organic food and organic wine, because again, we don't want to support farmers that are putting chemicals on the land. We don't want to support vineyards that are putting chemicals on the land. And I always say, I'm sure you're all good environmentalists. We have a duty to support the environmental vineyards. So please support them by drinking their wine whenever you can. Finally, 2 more things. Read, educate yourself. Read The Joy of Environmentalist. Read all the other books about the environment that you can, that people recommend to you, that are informative but not too gloomy. Finally, work out what your major passions are. Whatever it is you're passionate about in life that you do, whether it's painting or photography or technology, and then work out how you can combine those passions with supporting the planet. So you're doing what you love, but you're also supporting the planet at the same time. That's 23 minutes past. How am I doing, Paola? Can I keep going till past? No,
My
okay.
team will slaughter me. We have another talk back to back from Africa.
Okay, all right.
But
so
Isabel, I find you so much fun, so inspiring, because when you are listening to all what's going on the planet, all the challenges, they look so daunting, like, oh, okay, where am I going to start? I cannot do anything. While you give us like a good list of easy steps that we can take, each of us, in our life. And I have posted in our chat the link to your book, to also your website, so all our participants can also buy it, read it, and learn more from you. And the last piece of advice and wisdom, Isabel, that you want to share with our young audience, please.
Look at what gives you joy. Look at what makes you happy. Look at what you most like to do in your life, and find a way that you can do that whilst supporting the planet, combining your natural passions, the things that make you up in the morning, with supporting the earth. And then you will always enjoy your environmentalism. And that's really important.
Thank you, Isabel. I love to be in conversation with you, and I feel this one will be one of the many to come with Earth Sunshine Hub and you. We look forward to hear more from you and being further inspired. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone for being here with Isabel today. And please do explore more talks, conversation, our forum, networking lounge, and the whole platform